Hi, my name is Brittany Budlove. People also know me as Brittany Kern. I'm creating this video as a last-ditch effort to get justice. My daughter Tegan Denise Budlove was removed from my custody December 7, 2019, at 9 months old. Through this entire ordeal, I have never been allowed to tell my story. I spent almost 2 years believing the truth would come out because that was the law, but I was wrong. Once people in power feel like you are guilty, they will create their entire perspective around it. I'm here to finally tell my story. This is really hard for me. It is embarrassing and triggering, but I cannot allow my daughter to be collateral for a vendetta that Pasco County, Florida has against me. I will be telling my story from beginning to end, sparing no detail. It's about time the world knew the horrors of Child Protective Services. I hope I'm able to articulate myself properly. I'm doing my best to keep it together. And it's been really tough. But I'm a person who loves documentation, and I assure you that everything I say can be verified by video, recorded audio, email, text, court transcript, police report, or public record. I am done protecting people who have sought to destroy my life for a reason that wasn't my fault. Pasco County has tarnished my reputation, defamed my character, and ripped my only child away from me. And I know that there will be a lot of opinions, which I'm fine with, but I will do my best to clarify and answer anything I'm capable of. This will be the first of a series of videos. Please, if you have any empathy for a heartbroken mother who has given everything to fight for her only child, please share my video. Or if you simply just want to help me raise awareness to the injustices that occur within the world of Child Protective Services and help me fight for my daughter, please just share it. I am hoping that these reach the right people and help me correct this wrong. Out of respect, I will not address John's niece by name, but I will say my daughter's name over and over and over again because I'm her mother. And I always will be. And Pasco County doesn't get to take that away from me. So I'll start. John and I moved to Florida in June of 2018 solely to help his sister recover. We found out she was pregnant and wanted to be there for her because she expressed desire of wanting to keep her child. after already losing one in the system. I wanted to make sure that I supported John in whatever decision he wanted to make when it came to his family, because I was his wife. So we uprooted our lives and moved to Florida. His niece was born 3 months premature after his sister went on a drug binge on her birthday. His niece was immediately removed from his sister and taken into custody. And this was July of 2018. October of 2018, John's sister unfortunately passed away due to complications of prolonged drug abuse. In November of 2018, John and I decided that we would take on his niece to keep her in the family, and that's when the process started. So from November of 2018 to September of 2019, I had been subjected to 3 background checks, 2 fingerprinting sessions, and 3 home studies to get his niece. And at the time, I was pregnant with my own daughter and had given birth to her and was taking care of her during the process of trying to get his niece. And I fought for his niece just like I fought and am fighting for my own child, because I cared for her. And I thought it was important that she had a relationship with her family, because I knew that they loved her. We finally got his niece into our custody September 6th of 2019. The entire time, I had never had any access to his niece's current medical records. And the only thing I had was the documents given to me by her foster parents. So I was under the impression that everything was fine, that there was no worries, nothing. But after his niece's first doctor appointment, I realized that it wasn't going to be that simple. I had to get referrals for therapies, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, because she wasn't talking, she wasn't walking. She was trying, but at the time she was 14 months. And it worried me that she wasn't advancing. And I compared her to my infant, which her behaviors were extremely similar to. So I did everything that I could to make sure that at least she had the proper tools that she needed, which were the therapies. And there was just a lot of things that were concerning about just her behavior in general that nobody told us at all. So we just kept seeking medical advice and attention. His niece was in our custody from September 6, 2019 to December 6, 2019. And during that time, she had been to the doctor a total of 3 times and to the emergency room twice, because when the doctors told me that there was nothing wrong and I knew that there was something wrong, I took her to the emergency room instead. And while in our care, she suffered from, when we first got her, she was suffering from a yeast infection. And she also suffered from a UTI. And we just couldn't understand what was going on. His niece started getting sick the first week of November. I think I noticed it November 4th of 2019. And she was experiencing flu-like symptoms. She wasn't eating, she wasn't drinking. So she was taken to the doctor twice. They told us that it was a stomach bug. And the week after she first started getting sick, I ended up getting hospitalized because I couldn't breathe. I was in the hospital for 3 days because I couldn't breathe. They had me on antibiotics. They were removing fluid out of my lung. And I just didn't know what was going on. And so I wasn't sure if maybe I was getting sick at the time and his niece got sick because I was getting sick. But I just didn't know. And over the course of the entire month of November, she was not getting better. And honestly, I really wasn't getting better. Even to this day, I get periods where I can't breathe. And I'm still on an inhaler because of it. And I've never had issues breathing before. I was told that I had pneumonia. But I've had pneumonia before and it didn't feel like that. But that's what the doctors told me. And that's what I accepted. On December 6th, his niece was rushed to the emergency room because she wasn't very responsive. And this was after I returned home from work. I was working overnights. And I got home around a little after 5 a.m. and checked on his niece and Tegan. And I breastfed Tegan. And I pumped. And we laid down. And I was literally waking up an hour and 30 minutes afterwards that his niece wasn't responsive. She was rushed to the emergency room. And at the time, we really weren't given any information. We were just told that she had a brain bleed. The doctor initially said that it was a brain bleed due to a seizure. And so we just couldn't figure out what was happening. And we immediately got all of our things together once John came back from the hospital, because she had to be airlifted from Morton Plant Hospital near our house to St. Joseph's in Tampa because her condition was deteriorating. We literally still didn't know anything. We weren't really given any information. We just did what we felt we needed to do. So we got a hotel. We were getting ready to drive down there, and we were met by detectives, and that was the first time we met Detective Joshua Hansen and Detective Clifford Williams. And that began the process of my nightmare. So December 7th, 2019, at 3 o'clock in the morning, after detectives entered my house without consent or warrant, they removed my daughter Tia. And she was taken. And this was after I had been questioned for almost 20-something hours and wasn't allowed to breastfeed, wasn't allowed to pump, wasn't allowed to care for my infant at all. She was taken because Child Protective Services felt that due to them not knowing what happened to John's niece, they couldn't ensure that she would be safe. And as heartbreaking as that was, I understood. I understood why. I understood why, but I also hoped that it would be resolved, because I knew that I didn't do anything. I knew that I didn't know anything. And it was just quickly realized that they had no intent to resolve anything. When they took her from me, they knew exactly what they were going to do. And it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how much I fought. It didn't matter. they had their minds made up that they were going to take her from me, and I was never going to get her back. And I felt like I had a chance because I don't have a criminal past. I don't have a criminal background. I've never done anything in my life. Even when they asked me to submit to a random drug test, I did, and I passed because I don't do it. I don't even drink. And I don't drink for a numerous amount of reasons, but it doesn't matter because I don't. But when they did take her, they told me that they would take her to the closest family, which was John's uncle. But en route, the CPI, Beth Mason, basically told John's uncle, Scott, that they were not bringing her, that they were going to take her into a foster home, and then they were going to conduct a home study. She never made it. So for days, I didn't know where my daughter was. I didn't know. Before detectives left my home, they told me, Detective Williams said that I was strong. I was a strong woman, and that I was going to get through this. I'm not sure what that meant, but that's what he said. And I was ordered to show up to the shelter hearing at 8:30. So by this time, I had been up for over 36 hours. And I showed up. I went to the shelter hearing. And I was not given counsel at the shelter hearing. The people they had appointed to me had a conflict because they had represented John's sister in the past. So they were there as a friend of the court but couldn't represent me. And the Judge Deja Roberts, despite my pleading with her that my child was all I had, I have no family in Florida, none. And this was it for me. I told her I would leave. I told her whatever. She decided that it was best for my child to remain in foster care. And I couldn't understand because they told me that they felt John did something. And that night he got arrested. And I don't understand how it was not safe at that point. But that's the decision they made. So, as instructed, I gave them a list of family members' names. And I was also referred a woman named Jonetta Johnson by my, at the time, friend, Rafaela McCoy. Miss Johnson basically volunteered herself and said that she would help in any way possible, that with her being a former foster child, she knew how hard it was, and that she would do everything to make sure that I got my daughter back because I was my daughter's only hope. That's what she said. And so, stupidly, I put her name down because I trusted my friend. I didn't know this woman, but I trusted my friend, or who I thought she was my friend. When they placed my daughter with her the following week after she was removed from me, and CPI Beth Mason told Jonetta that they were looking at her for a permanent placement. Nothing had even been investigated at this time, but they were looking at her for a permanent placement. So they already knew that they weren't gonna try to give me my daughter back. And then in an interview recorded, Detective Joshua Hansen told my father-in-law that he was going to make sure that I never got my daughter back. So, 14 days after they removed my daughter, they put in an expedited TPR against me. They put in an expedited petition to terminate my parental rights to my daughter, which meant that she not only could not be given back to me, but I wasn't afforded a case plan to remediate anything either. Which is strange, because they give drug addicts the opportunity to fight for their kids, but they didn't give me one. It was tough. And I tried everything that I could. And I finally retained an attorney, a very, very expensive one. 2 days after they put in the petition to expedite the termination of my parental rights, Jonetta told case management that she wanted to adopt my daughter. My baby had only been with her for 2 weeks, and she already had plans of adopting my daughter. And I don't understand. No facts had even came out. Nothing. There's no investigating that had even been done at that time. But that's what they saw. That's what she said. And that's what she did. And in that entire time, she pretended to be cordial with me, or she pretended to care about my relationship with my daughter. But she had one agenda, and that was to get her. I found out later that she wanted more children, but was afraid of risking her own health. So I guess taking mine seemed to be the latter and the easiest option, since my friend basically just gave my daughter to her, used me to give her to her. Even after that, the staff at Youth and Family Alternatives never contacted my family. I had to get the judge to order them to contact my family almost a month later. The worker was a case manager supervisor, Tanya Lewis, and her supervisor, Suzanne Campbell. Suzanne, who was also over the adoption of John's niece. They didn't contact family. And they told me that they were only putting in paperwork if ordered by a judge. So I begged the judge, Judge James R. Stearns, to have them put the paperwork in. And even after ordered, it took them 3 months to put the paperwork in, to give my family the chance to fight for my daughter. My cousin reached out to Tanya Lewis about adopting or getting placement of Tegan. And Tanya Lewis told her that they were not recommending a change of placement. At this time, my daughter had only been in custody for a couple months. Tanya Lewis claimed that my daughter was significantly bonded with Jonetta after the same woman and department encouraged me to give Jonetta all the resources she needed so that my daughter could adjust. They used that same thing as a means to deny my child a relationship with her family. We had a mediation in February of 2020 where Assistant State Attorney Jillian Phelps said over and over again that despite the fact that I was not charged, arrested, or accused of anything, that there's no way that I could not have known what was going on. And that confused me because everything she said went against all the medical records I have. Several doctors had no concerns of abuse. Several doctors. Not just one, several. No concerns. So I couldn't understand. So what Jillian Phelps did was create a narrative that his niece was getting beaten over time, and I knew and didn't do anything. Despite the fact several doctors didn't see that. And that was the only ammunition she needed to pursue an expedited termination of parental rights proceeding against me. That's all. That's all she had to say. It didn't matter what was supported. It doesn't matter. If they believe it and they follow with the court, that's it. There's nothing that I can do but try to just wait for the truth to come out, which unfortunately for me never did, despite having a paid attorney. In March of 2020, again, in more efforts to keep my daughter from going with family, Tanya Lewis stated that she didn't believe that my cousin was a real person and that I made her up. So my cousin had to fly down here to prove that she was a real person. She also had to prove her familial relationship to me. She was ordered to bring her birth certificate and show how she was related to me. I don't remember ever having to do that when we were trying to get John's niece, but that's what they made her do. But my cousin, loving me so much, got on a red eye and flew down here to be there. And then, unfortunately, the COVID restrictions hit. So they took away visitation in person. And I had to do virtual visits with the 1-year-old whose birthday I missed. My baby's first birthday. I didn't get to celebrate with her. And even at that time, they wouldn't place her with any family. So my mom moved from Illinois to Florida and became a resident to try to get custody. I helped my mom get an apartment while she was looking for a job. I helped her get settled. My mom's home study was approved twice, and then they denied it. And they denied it off the basis of a comment that she made to Detective Hansen 7 months prior about not believing all the horrible things that he said John did to his niece. She just didn't believe it. And they felt because of that comment, she couldn't be protective. And the moment the Department of Children and Family put that stigma on people that they can't be protective, it almost eliminates any possibility that they would ever have of getting custody of a child. And they know the language. They know the ins and outs. They know the loophole. They know what to say, even down to consistently calling me aggressive. I guess the only thing that I needed to do to be aggressive was be black, because I've never done anything to anybody, ever. Even after these people kidnapped my daughter, I still didn't get aggressive. I just wanted my baby back. And I knew that being an upstanding citizen, I shouldn't have had any issues or anything to worry about. The Department of Children and Families, or Youth and Family Alternatives, didn't conduct a home study for Jonetta until June or July, so 6 or 7 months after they already had custody of my daughter. And in the meantime, they denied my mom's home study. And that just doesn't make sense. So they didn't even know if this woman was fit to have my daughter. But they didn't care. As long as she wasn't with me or with my family, they didn't care. And then they just ignored the fact that Jonetta's mother was arrested for violent offenses just a year prior. And this woman had also lost children to the system. And they were okay with her being around my child or helping Jonetta care for my child. And I couldn't understand that either, because they wouldn't let anyone see my daughter unless they were background checked and fingerprinted. And I know that she wasn't. And it was always a double standard. My family had to do all the fighting, but they let her family trample over everything just because. She didn't have to follow the rules at all. Her nor anyone else associated with her. Around that same time, we were preparing for the TPR trial. Jillian Phelps denied 90% of the witnesses on my list. She claimed that she did not want this trial to turn into a character witness trial, and also felt that some witnesses, medical related, were not relevant. So I'm not sure how that works. I don't know. But so my witness list was cut down significantly because of that. Meanwhile, the state's witnesses were well into the 18s, 20s of just random people that didn't have anything to do with anything. But we couldn't argue that. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if my attorney just didn't or we couldn't. I at this point, I still don't know. So then in August, I noticed there was some bruising around my daughter's genital area. And I raised my concerns with the court. Tanya Lewis claimed that I did it, despite the fact that I only was getting 2 hours with my child. And the caregiver, Jonetta, had her for 7 days a week. And somehow a woman who's never been abusive in her entire life now would abuse her only child who she was fighting for, according to Tanya Lewis. And after that, Jonetta began to make dozens of claims against me for no reason at that point. Even to the point to say that she was the only mother my child had ever known, and argued that my daughter was not bonded to me, despite, again, COVID restrictions. I tried to see her as much as I could, but she was bonded to me. But that's always the department's way of trying to sever a tie between a biological parent and a child. They use language that way because no one else can argue it. No one else would be able to know that. Around that time, we ended up getting a new judge. We went from having Judge James R. Stearns to Judge Laura Lee Westing, who is also the wife of Pinellas County Sheriff. She denied my cousin's home study using the same language that she doesn't believe. She said that due to my strong personality, she didn't believe that my cousin was capable of being protective. So again, they've denied 2 family members who have passed background checked fingerprinting and got approved home studies. Judge Weston also argued the length of time my daughter was in placement, ignoring the fact that there was a global pandemic. Everyone seemed to ignore the fact that the world was changing so much that people couldn't even walk outside their homes without feeling unsafe. And her not taking COVID into consideration significantly altered my daughter's chance of being with her family. So the trial started in August of 2020, and we were only the second day possibly in when Detective Joshua Hansen gave testimony and based it on audio recordings from interviews that he had never submitted to the court. So the trial had to be stopped, and those items had to be given to each side. Even after they were submitted, the state still never submitted them in as evidence, ever. So now the entire trial testimony was based on what people were saying, despite the fact it significantly contradicted what was said in the interviews. But the judge never got an opportunity to hear any of that, because the state, Jillian Phelps, basically did not submit things into evidence that she knew would weaken her case. So she relied on testimony of people's recollection of something that could be verified by the interviews or even by the data download, which they did on my phone and John's phone. Throughout the trial, testimony was allowed in without evidence or without a foundation. The judge allowed it every time. For the entire trial, I pretty much had a standing objection to several things. The judge allowed Jillian Phelps to read text messages and ask me questions on text messages that she couldn't see. And Jillian Phelps continuously, over and over again, read them out of context and jumped around conversations to try to piece together a story that she wanted. She was taking information from 2015 and applying it to 2019, and it was just it was crazy. It was unbelievable to be there and witness. But ultimately, the judge made her ruling and terminated my parental rights based on the testimony of Dr. Carol Lilly, who is a forensic pediatrician. And unfortunately for me, Dr. Lilly was the only medical expert at the trial. Now, I don't know why. I had a paid attorney. I had the resources to get whatever witnesses I needed, but my attorney did not acquire any. My attorney was Scott L. Robbins. I don't know why he didn't. I don't know if he even cared about fighting for my trial, which is the ongoing theme in Florida. Attorneys don't really fight for you. They fight for a paycheck, but they don't fight for you. So, since there was no one to refute Dr. Lilly's testimony, the judge relied heavily on that testimony, despite the fact Dr. Carol Lilly did not, she contradicted herself several times. She wanted to summarize the reports from other specialists, but then when asked a question about that specific medical report, she would say that you have to refer to the specialist. So I wasn't sure why she was attempting to summarize something that she could not explain in detail. Dr. Lilly also falsified a conversation that she and I had. And I don't know why. Maybe
she has so many cases. Maybe she was confusing mine with someone else's. So I don't want to flat out call her a liar. But I will say that she did falsify a conversation that she claimed she and I had. Dr. Lilly and I only spoke for 15 minutes. And the only question she asked me was, how was his niece's behaviors? How did I think the bruising occurred? And that was pretty much it. But her testimony was very lengthy, and I didn't speak to her for that long. She also talked about me being anxious, despite the fact that I hadn't that I hadn't pumped or been able to breastfeed my daughter. And at that time, about 7-8 hours, and that I had been awake for over 24 hours. So they didn't care. But Dr. Lilly's testimony also, it wasn't written in the oral ruling, but her testimony was heavily given to her by Detective Joshua Hanson. She had not even reviewed John's niece's medical records before coming to any conclusion. She got all of her information from him. Dr. Lilly also testified that there were pictures taken of his niece when she made it to the second hospital, which was approximately 8 hours after she was initially admitted. And they noted all this substantial bruising on her body that wasn't there when she went to the first hospital. Dr. Carol Lilly testified that she was contacted by one of the nurses, and the nurse gave her all the other bruising verbally on the phone, but it wasn't actually written in his niece's medical report. Yeah. Also, they took pictures after they failed several times trying to intubate his niece. So what they saw and what I saw, or what any medical professional at the previous hospital saw, were not the same things. It also was interesting as well that the medical reports showed that her brain bleed did not start on the outer surface. It started in the middle brain, which contradicts the idea of being shaken or whatever they were trying to say. They noted several types of markings and bruisings. They even went as far to say that his niece had broken cartilage in her ear. And the issue was that she was born with a cauliflower ear to begin with. So, again, they didn't have anything to support what they were saying. They were just basically fishing and trying to link things together to create their whole story. There's so many unanswered questions in this, and Dr. Lilly's testimony seemed to have been the one that held the most weight. And her testimony was completely biased. She worked very closely with Child Protective Services, and so the information that she received and the information she relayed was strictly one-sided. She had never actually reviewed anything. And then she noted bruising on his niece's back that we said over and over again was a birthmark, but the state refused to submit pictures of his niece's back. And my thing is, if it wasn't there anymore, then why was it so difficult to submit pictures? And even to this day, and John still has a pending criminal trial, to this day, we don't know. And they still have yet to submit that information. So what they kept calling bruising could essentially just be a birthmark, but we would never know. And through my trial, the judge allowed text messages to be read, though they weren't submitted into evidence. They allowed testimony from Detective Joshua Hanson about jail phone calls between John and whomever that didn't include me, and allowed Detective Hanson to testify to those calls. even though those calls as well were never submitted into evidence. They took certain testimony and held it with a higher regard than others, and was always the testimony that painted myself out to be a bad person. Any person who said anything good about me turned out to be not as credible as the ones who had bad things to say about me, including my former friend, Rafaela McCoy. She testified against me, and she testified to a conversation that we never had. She also said that I threatened, though I hadn't spoke to her in several months. She testified that I threatened to murder people in this situation. And nobody corroborated that. She didn't have a date that this was said. She didn't have a time. She didn't have text message. She didn't have anything. It was just her showing up and saying that I said something that I 100% did not say to her. We weren't even speaking. So I didn't understand that. And ultimately, the state shifted the burden of proof. I had to prove I was innocent versus them proving that I was guilty. Everything that they based everything on was all speculation. They had a theory, and though their theory was not supported by anything other than the testimony of people who were not involved or had something to gain from this, that's what they did. I was completely railroaded, and my attorney is not exempt. He allowed them to do that despite the fact that he was a paid attorney, and I did 90% of the work in my case myself. He was not prepared, though he insisted on the trial being pushed back. He did not do anything to defend me at all. And because of that, it allowed speculation. But ultimately, I did not get a fair trial. Everything that they did or said, they lumped me and John together as if we were holding hands and doing whatever together. They didn't care that I wasn't home, that I was at work. They didn't care that I had done everything to provide for those children. They didn't care that there was nothing to corroborate their story or any that I didn't have a record or any. They didn't care. I was never given the benefit of the doubt. Judge Laura Lee Weston wouldn't even address me by name. She constantly called me ma'am. She referred to everyone else by their name but me. And it's sad to say, but I was the only black face there that didn't have anything bad to say about another person who had a black face. Because making up things about people didn't benefit me. I just wanted the truth to come out. And unfortunately, like I said, it didn't. And my daughter is paying the ultimate price for it. My rights were terminated in December of 2020. And to this day, I still don't know why. I still don't know how what they think someone else did has to do with me. Because I've done so much research. And the idea that I could not have known is absolutely ridiculous. When you're a mother nursing and caring for a newborn and an infant and a child who has significant health issues and taking care of your home financially, there's a lot of things that you don't know. And if people want to hide something from you, they can. And I have yet to see where even the wives of serial killers are held accountable for whatever the world thinks their husbands did. Nobody could ever say that they saw me be abusive or angry or aggressive or harm
anybody. I was named over and over again, even by Jonetta, as being a good mom. And I don't understand how good moms have their kids ripped from them, especially me. Because I sacrificed my own life and my own child to care for someone else's because I believed that was the right thing to do. And the same things that I was rewarded for to take on that other child is being used against me for my own. The state claims I failed to protect. And I didn't fail to protect anybody. I didn't fail at anything. I did everything that I could. I really did. And even if I can go back, there was nothing more that I can do besides give his niece back. That was my only option. After my rights were terminated, I put in an appeal. So I put in an appeal at the end of January to appeal the judgment. And from January to August 11th, I received my appeal decision. And the higher court agreed that I deserved to lose my child. Just one word. Affirmed. I haven't been able to sleep since. Because I don't understand why. And I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that my trial attorney didn't do his job. And they could only go by speculation. Because apparently the court didn't make an error despite the speculation. And I don't understand how. So now I'm sure that Jonetta, her family, the state, has entered a protection order so that I could never see my child again. My family is still, to this day, fighting to get custody of my daughter. Still. They haven't stopped. And they are still not given the opportunity to have a relationship with her. This is my only child. I have 100+ family members. And it kills me that my daughter would never know any of them. And it kills me that the state is trying so hard and fighting so hard to keep her away from me or my family. And the reason they're doing that is because they want to erase me. The guardian litem attorney, I think her name is Carrie Marsland Pettit, she said in open court that I wasn't Tegan's mother, that I was just Brittany. So if I'm not her mother, then who is? I carried her. I remember when I went into labor. I remember when I delivered her. I remember bringing her home. So if I'm not her mother, then who is? And now at this time, I'm attempting to take it to the Supreme Court. I'm not optimistic because if they're going by the same information, that's all that there is. I want a retrial. I want the opportunity to fight fairly. I want the opportunity to not be railroaded. And Judge Laura Lee Weston can allow that. And I feel like she should. Especially after Judge Weston denied my order of protection after my police report that I had to file because a Youth and Family Alternatives case manager sexually assaulted me. She denied my order of protection and said there were other avenues I could have went. I live here by myself. I don't have anybody here. I've been in Florida this entire time just to fight for my daughter. And she doesn't feel as though I need protection from anybody. And I'm going to be honest, I'm terrified. I'm terrified, and I've done everything legally that I can do. And when you have a judge telling you that even your fear isn't enough, that I don't need protection. Everybody else in the state of Florida needs protection from me, but I don't need protection after someone violated me. That says a lot about the place you live. And I don't want to be here anymore, but I can't leave my baby. I can't leave her. I just can't. So I'm just hoping that this will incite anybody. I deserve a retrial. I deserve a fair trial. I deserve a trial that is based on fact and not feeling. I deserve a trial that allows me to fight for myself and not be stigmatized by whatever they think John did. I need a trial that is unbiased. I need a trial that is solely about what they believe I did or didn't do. My daughter does not deserve any of this. And Jonetta does not deserve to adopt her. She lied to get her, lied to keep her, and continues to lie. She does not deserve the opportunity to be able to raise my daughter. My daughter deserves to be with her family. So I need everyone to just get the information out. I'm in Pasco County, Florida. I'm in Port Richey. Please. This is all I have left. I've exhausted almost every legal option I have. Please. This shouldn't happen. This just shouldn't happen. And unfortunately, this is what it means to be Black in a place that they don't like you. No matter what you do, no matter how educated you are, no matter how civilized you are, no matter how well-rounded you are, no matter what you do, as long as you look how you do, you are already guilty. Because the strange thing is, even though they believed John is the one who did something, they treated me exactly like him. And at the same time, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I wasn't here. I can't know something I'm not here for. And I've done everything in my power to separate myself. And no matter what I do, I'm roped in to whatever they feel he did. John's criminal. And you know, the sad part is, even as John is exonerated or not convicted, they still won't overturn terminating my parental rights. Because one is civil and one is criminal. So even if beyond a reasonable doubt, they find that he didn't do anything, they still won't give me my baby back. And that's crazy. So I need a new trial. Because if the two have nothing to do with one another, then I don't understand why she was taking it all. So please, 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 please. And I am not a person who asks for help.